Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and begin the meeting. Thank you all for coming. I'm Sean Harris, the mayor. Next to me is Robin Bertagna, our finance director, and Dave Shaw, council member. We have Spencer Morrison over there from finance, and Terrell sitting behind the computer monitor. He's put a lot of work into preparing for tonight. Brian is in the back. He is running the audio video. And the audio video is a reason why I have a request. If you would like to speak or you think you might want to, I'm going to ask everybody to come up and grab a microphone. Dave and I are merely facilitating this conversation or these meetings for the next 6. This is your meeting, and you're in charge, and we're going to hear from you. But for some folks, they might not be able to make it in every meeting. We are giving them the courtesy of recording audio and video for the meeting. Even though we want to make it informal, this is kind of a formal, informal setting. This is the only room we have available that is equipped for recording. So I would ask, of course can't make you, but if you're going to be active, I would encourage you to grab a chair up front. Be careful for the middle one, it's kind of hot. And then otherwise, whenever you like to speak, go up to the podium up there, and then there's a live microphone over there, so we can get you on camera and stuff. All right, does that make sense? Okay. So what this is a meeting that we've called, or a series of meetings we've called. We put a lot of material together to address specifically the unfunded liability in the PERS and the Public Employees Retirement System for the city. It's an issue and a problem and a challenge that reaches through the entire state, if not the country. We need to do everything we can to get in front of it as best we can with what we have and develop some sort of a plan in place to address this unfunded liability. There's been several requests, primarily from Mr. Trainer over here, that we have a public forum such as this. So we heard that request, we considered it, and here we are. So this, again, is your meeting. What we do not want it to be, however, is a complaint session. Go back and complain about how we got here in the first place. Sometimes it's important to know how we got here in order to address it moving forward, but to complain and say things like, we have to do something, why aren't you doing anything? Well, we are doing as much as we can, I can guarantee you that. And doing something is what we're here to answer, is to what is that something specifically. So my hope is that we can come up with something concrete to use as policy moving forward as a city. But even more so, maybe we can come up with something, a brainstorm of ideas that we can kick out statewide, if not nationwide. You never know what we might come up with. So we're definitely open to everything, but I do want to keep things professional and keep focused on why we're here, is to come up with some suggestions, possible solutions and answers, but not go back and forth and wallow around in the complaining process. We all know it's a bad thing. We all don't want to have to be dealing with it. We get that. Let's move past that and start digging down into some action items and some responses. So that would be our objective, to do that. We have a July 18th meeting, which is today. I've just established some kind of ground rules. Just remember that if things get heated, and I don't anticipate you folks are pretty calm, but don't just speak up, because we have to have you on the microphone if you're not going to sit up there. All right, and that's as a courtesy, just for the folks who are not here that might want to come to a future meeting. July 18th, which is today, we're setting expectations, objectives, and ground rules. August 15th, we're going to have a discussion of the city's unfunded liability and perspective from Assemblyman Gallagher's and Senator Nielsen's office. September 19th, we're going to have Speaker Dane Hutchings regarding the League of California Cities perspective and update on the city's unfunded liability. This meeting, the October meeting, is going to be October 10th, which is a new date. Please note that October 10th is a new date. There will have an actuary from CalPERS who will attend the discussion and have questions. It's a brave person. November 21, we're going to have a discussion led by Councilmember Shaw regarding recommendations and solutions. And December 19th, we're going to wrap up and discuss next steps led by myself. All right. Has everybody signed in? Is anybody not signed in? Okay, make sure you sign in, because if you're not able to make a meeting, or if there's anything in future that comes up, we're going to email you the information. There are some packets in the back. If anyone who's here tonight does not have one, they're in the back on the table. Terrell was busy making copies on that, I'm sure. And with that being said, I think, would you like to say something, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet.
I think, okay, yeah, it is on. Piggybacking on what the mayor said, people have asked for this for quite a while, and it's glad to see that the mayor took the initiative and made it happen. So kudos to you, Mr. Mayor. What I would like to see from you all is that you come in with an open mind and not just what we think so far. Because this is going to be a learning process. As many of you know, PERS, you're not going to learn in an hour once a month for 6 months. You're probably not going to learn everything you need to know about it in 5 years. But together, collectively, we can approach this with open minds, digest the information. If an idea comes, let's make note of it at the meeting that we are along the way. And we're equipped to do that, and we're going to have trailing notes that's going to follow us all the way through, so that as we learn more about PERS, we can come back and revisit all of these and really see what we can take out of this. I really have high hopes that we can come up with something that will help us. I'm hoping that we can come up with some ideas that maybe we can take to Sacramento, because as you guys know, Sacramento has a lot to do with what goes on with PERS. But collectively, we can think outside of the box. And I just ask you to approach it with an open mind. Whatever you may have preconceived before, you may still have those thoughts, but let's be open to our own self-discovery as we go through this process, because the mayor and I are going to be on this journey with you. And let's see if we can come up with some new ideas and, ultimately fix California. That's what we all want to do, right? So thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to the next 6 months. So,
some of the reading material, there's a lot of reading material we've been going through. They're in the handouts. It's also going to be available online. But these slides here, there's several items. Let's see, we have 6, 10, 10 items available for reading. So I would encourage everyone to take the time, if you have it, to get through that for our next meeting, so we can use that as a platform for discussion as well. Some of the ideas that we may come up with, we're going to list them out, list all the ideas. We're going to document everything, what the expectations are, just kind of stick it to the wall, and then we'll go through and see the feasibility of each one of those ideas. So there is no crazy wrong answer. Just throw it out there if you have an idea. Hopefully it's something that can pass muster through all the filters we have to go through legally and policy-wise and everything else. If it comes out and emerges and still alive, there we have one of our answers, right? So let's hope for that. I went over the schedule already. There's your homework with the reading assignments. If you miss a meeting, we highly recommend you watch the previous meeting to get up to speed. That's either on the city's website or YouTube, as I mentioned. If you haven't done so, please sign in. We talked about that. I commented, Councilmember Shaw commented, and once again, of course, we thank you for coming. I would like to go. Does everybody know everybody? Probably not. We have Rick, Phil, and Elaine up there. But can we start over here, maybe with you, Rick? And don't forget to turn on your microphone, please. I would just like to hear from folks to see what you would like to get out of this series of meetings. Are you planning on attending all of them, I hope?
Yeah,
okay. Push the button on your microphone. It's got to be, there you go.
there we go. These are really nice chairs, by the way. My name is Rick Dice. I now live in Live Oak. I've been there 3 years, but I lived in Yuba City from 1991 till 2006. So this pension issue has been near and dear for quite a while. It started out with controversy in the county, and that's how a lot of us got involved. Phil Traynor explained to me what an unfunded liability was half an hour before I got on the radio, so there's a lot of details to these plans. But yeah, there is some hope. and I'm glad that you guys have facilitated this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Phil?
I think everybody in here knows me because I've been the one that's griped about this more than anybody. Since 2004, I've griped. And I really appreciate what you people are doing because you've stuck your necks out. I hate to say this, but you may get your heads chopped off. I don't see any way out of this. As much as I've griped about it, I don't see any way out. But at least you're the only council that I, since 2004, have answered the call to open it up to the public. I've been promised every year that, yes, we're going to do this, Phil, we're going to do that, and I stood up there like an idiot, listening to people telling me what they're going to do, and they all walked away. We are in a position today where the unfunded liability is so huge, but it's just not Yuba City and Sutter County. The whole state's in the same racket. When I've written this thing up, when I talk to myself about this is the best Ponzi scheme that's ever been devised. I mean, Madoff didn't even conceive of as good a deal as this is. And I don't want to gripe, but let's hope that maybe we could get PERS in to decide what we have to do. I think PERS has pretty well told the city and the county what they must do. And my gripe is that we are hiring PERS. PERS is an employee of the city, and yet we let them tell us, this is what you have to do for us. As an employer, I don't think I ever let my employees tell me what I had to do if I was going to write the check. So I would like to think that maybe we can come up with something. I've given the mayor a list of things that I would like to see happen. And maybe if we could work on maybe half of these, maybe we can come up with something. But really and truly, I think we've run into a blank wall. And there's nobody can walk away and say, well, you have to do this and you have to do that. You can't do anything. You've got a big overdraft that you can't cover. That's it. And I will do anything I can to help as we go along in this. And once again, I really do appreciate you people doing what you've done.
Thank you, Phil. For the purposes of those who are going to be viewing this later and for the record, would you mind going down the list of, you have basically a request for information here. Would you mind reading that?
Yeah, this is what I have thought about. I think these are the things we have to do before we go too far. I think we need PERS. We need to get from PERS what their investment returns have been in the last 30 years. Everybody's told about the big investments they've done and the monies they've made some years, the monies they've lost. But I think it's the right of this city to get this from them in writing. None of this stuff on the phone anymore, in writing. Number two, we need to see the annual increase and decrease of the PERS assets. We need PERS to give this Yuba City the annual percentage paid by the city into PERS each year for 30 years. The reason I say 30 years is that back in 1990, and that's 30 years ago, the PERS had a credit balance. And in 2005, they had an overdraft. The next thing is that I'd like to see is that we need the annual percentage that the employees have paid in the last 30 years. Because once again, some of those people 30 years ago are getting pensions today. We should see what the unfunded, some of those people retired in 2002, they had a fully paid up pension plan, so they should not come in under this unfunded liability. Wait a see what else. I'd like to see the contract that we have with PERS, with all of the extras that go along with it, the addendums and all the rest of the stuff. The next thing is, I think we have to look after the retirees, and I would like to know how PERS handles their portion of the unfunded liability. The next thing is that what does PERS do when a person retires from PERS or from the city? Do PERS leave that money at risk like the rest of the funds are, or did they put it into government bonds, or did they look after it as a more secured item? All these things I've asked about before, but never got any answers. I would like to know how PERS has come up with the unfunded liability. And one of the things that is a gripe to me is they're telling you, the city, that you have to pay 7% on the unfunded liability. You can borrow, the city's got a good credit rating. You can borrow money today at 3.5% to 4%. Why are you paying PERS 7%?
Yeah.
Crazy. I would tell PERS where to go. And I would like to know, personally, I would like to know is that how many groups are listed in the city, and how are those groups listed on the unfunded liability side? What I'm trying to say is that there are groups that are getting more than others, and those that are getting more, we have to know who they are and what's happening with that money. Other than that, there's other things on here, but really, I'm just repeating myself. But you've heard me. Thank you.
I'm a retired government employee. I turned it on, but I hate those things. But I had a back injury, but my boss held up getting me removed because I could not work 6 hours a day. He held up until that passed. My retirement went up by 25% just by a couple of days because they backdated that, and that was wrong. I don't expect that. I think we've done this with loads of employees, and it is absolutely wrong. Another thing that I want the city to do is to start notifying Sacramento that we need to have better control of CalPERS. When they say, we won't invest in these companies, because we don't like these companies, we get lower results. This same time, I had a very small amount set aside because I sent our children through college, but a small amount set aside for my retirement. I've got $1 million now. That's because I had really good Jimerson help me on that stuff. But we've got to back away from this, and we also have to require that the employees recognize that they're costing us this. Yes, I did have to pay some of the retirement. That didn't bother me a bit. And then I get the big raise just because of 2 days later, my boss signed it off. And then he wanted to hire me as an independent, which I couldn't do because that was not legal. But we've got to clean this up, and we have to get the employees to accept that they're the ones that are getting the benefits, and they need to work on this. We didn't go into this until they unionized. And I remember Robert Stark speaking at the county and saying, let's pay these payments to CalPERS on the first day they're due, and then we don't have to pay interest for that period. Well, guess what? They turned him down. So look at what you're doing, and Robin is great. So look at what you're doing and require your employees to understand what has happened here. I never saw where so many retired people go on cruises, they go everywhere, because it's all gone up there. And is that fair to the people out here in this community that pay the taxes to us? I feel guilty. So I just want it fixed.
So can you summarize a hope or expectation you have for attending the series of meetings?
The expectation that the city take several steps. Deal with your employees. Talk to them about the responsibilities. deal with Sacramento to get some changes made on this. Deal with that board for CalPERS. Good heavens, that guy was going to go to jail and he killed himself instead. That corrupted and took money. Maybe we need to change the boards down there. And maybe we need to have more input on that. I said maybe, but in my opinion, we do. So my goal is clean up Yuba City, get the strength, and tell Sacramento that they have to change this. Sorry. It's okay, Bill.
Yeah, I say something.
Yes.
If you're able to do half of what we're speaking about right now, you people are going to be, everybody in the state's looking for you. There isn't any city or county that aren't in the same position, and they're writing it up all the time, and nobody's getting anything done.
Right.
And really and truly, you're the only ones that I know of, and as I say, I've been working in this 15 years now. This is the only time I've seen an open door on the pension issue. And you know, kudos. I think you've done wonders, but God help you. You don't have a hope in hell.
Let's hope we can come up with something.
Yes,
All right.
I would hope
We're
so,
here to
yes.
listen, that's for sure. Spencer Morrison has a microphone. He's doing everybody a favor, so you don't have to walk up to the podium. I am interested, of course, you're not required to. I would like to hear from those who took the time out of their evening to come and join us today. I'd like to hear what you would like to get out of this meeting or attending this series of meetings, starting with Mr. I don't know, gentleman's name.
My name's Jim Seif, and I didn't know that you're going to have speakers come in. That was great. I think we can, because they'll learn about how this mess is getting, how it got where it is, and what's going to happen. But the reading I've been doing is the common denominator that most people come to is that the salary levels in California are way too high for what they should be, and the multipliers are too high for the retirement. It needs to be changed. And I don't know, PERS and city, who has what say on doing who can do what, whether you can change it or they can change it or they can get permission or what you got to do about it. But the bottom line is, the trouble is, the unions run the state. And they like their pensions, and they're the ones that get the people put on the board. They're the ones they elect to run it. It's unfortunately, I don't know what we can do, but we can, like you say, brainstorm on it. And you're talking about loans at low interest. I read some, I don't know which state it was, I think it was Illinois or something, that their state is going to offer the cities and counties low interest loans to pay their unfunded liabilities so that it'd be cheaper than the way we're doing it now. So I'm glad to hear we're going to learn something, and thank you for the forum.
And forgive me, sir, I missed your name?
James Seif?
James Seif?
Yeah.
And so, James, to just summarize, your suggestions are change salaries, lower them. Unions run the state, and that's a problem. See what we can do about that, and consider low interest loans. That's what I wrote down.
Well, ask if the state assembly or senate ever, they don't even want to talk about this stuff, but if they could help, I don't know what it's
Well, we have, we do have representatives from Assembly Gallagher and Senator Nielsen coming to one of our meetings.
Oh, we do?
I think it's our
Okay.
third one, our second one, actually.
Oh, okay.
So that would be an
Excuse me.
opportunity for that.
None of our elected assembly and senators get a retirement. The voters voted them out because they were all doing this to us. This may happen to the public employees in the future. So don't expect them to really fight a whole lot to close this down. because they had it closed down on themselves.
Okay. Well, Mr. Scythe expressed an interest in communicating with the senators and their legislators, and so I just want to let you know that they will be here
Okay.
at our next meeting for questions. Yes.
Something positive, you talk about the high formulas, the 2 sevens, the 3 at 50. Governor Brown, who I wasn't a huge fan of, but he pushed the pepper plants, the new plants, the 2 at 62. And I haven't summarized all the numbers for Yuba City, but in Live Oak, we had about a dozen employees or 11 employees in the 2.7. And the city of Live Oak had to send $330,000 in for those 12. We had 9 new employees under the pepper plan. And for those 9, we only sent, the city of Live Oak only sent PERS $20,000, the total difference. The only problem is a lot of, the older plants are grandfathered in, and it's only new employees. But it's a good start. That's a very positive thing. People weren't sure, and Spencer would agree, right? It's helping here in Yuba City too, isn't it, the pepper? Yeah, and it is even now, but it's just, for a lot of people, it's just a little too late. But you know what? It's better than nothing, so.
Yeah, it's on the horizon, the faraway horizon, but thank you, Rick. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, and glad to be here. My name is Bob Swearingen, and I'm here really to listen and learn. And I would have to say that the people that have already summarized what they feel should happen have said it well enough. I don't blame the cities and the counties for what's going on. I blame the PERS system and our legislators. And I think somewhere along the line, as they recommend, we have to work with them to break that jam that they hate to do it because it's going to be a war when they do, but at some point it has to happen because the system will disintegrate. And so I'm hoping that you all will find ways to work with PERS and the politicians to affect change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Lawrence Mertz. I live in North Yuba City. Is that thing on? I have been following this pension problem we've had in this county since its inception. I support the arguments put forth by Phil Traynor and Elaine Miles. I add to that I think that something's got to be done to reduce the effect of politicians dictating where the investments take place. I do not understand how they can divest from oil, from firearms, from tobacco, from any other sin tax because it's a feel-good thing. And the result is they cut the profits, the investment returns substantially. And I don't understand how they're able to get away with this. I really think that investments for retirees' pensions ought to be totally isolated from the effects of politicians. It's one thing to give command structure to it. It's another thing to dictate how and micromanage how the money is invested. The other part is it doesn't seem right that we have such a debt obligation. Years and years ago, we had the federal government had 2 types of retirement plans. One was a civil service retirement plan, which was totally like the CalPERS plan, and the other one is they came up with the Federal Employees Retirement System, in which they had 2 separate programs, but you were it was like a 401 program. And quite frankly, the civil service retirement system was quite lucrative, comparatively speaking, but you had to be in it for 30 years to draw a pension. There was no walking out at year 22 and expecting a pension. Where with the PERS program, you could take it with you any place you went. And I think that the only way we're going to get out of this is have 2 separate retirement plans and walk away from PERS by time. It's taken 25 years for people under the civil service retirement system to be voted out, and it's going to be the last of the baby boomers that's going to take it. But it's killing the federal government with pension obligations. We're not alone with this.
So, Mr. Mertz, I have down here, change politicians' ability to decide where investments are made. and walk away from PERS and have two systems on our own.
Come up with a different system. I like
Okay.
the idea of borrowing money to pay our pension obligations because of the 3% versus 7%. I don't understand how PERS can dictate where we allocate our money and give us such poor returns as a result.
Right.
I wouldn't accept those kind of returns on my 401 plan.
Right.
Thank you for putting this
Thank
meeting
you.
together. I think it's remarkable that we are making a step in the right direction.
Hi, Pat Miller. I agree with the comments on where CalPERS invests, and I think they should be investing in more lucrative stocks and bonds. And I also believe that the salaries of city and county employees, government employees, are, especially in the rural areas, are very high. And just as a comparison, I'm a retiree from the state. When I was working, I paid in 7.5% to my retirement. The state paid in 7.5%. With city and county employees, the employees are not paying 50% of the cost of their retirement. The city is paying much more, and I think they should be paying 50%. I'd like to see that, and I don't know that and I don't like the California rule, but I think the courts are going to have to decide whether or not to continue that. So maybe a separate retirement system would be the way to go until CalPERS, as soon as you can get out, that we're done. So thank you much for having the meetings.
My name is Judy Hartney. I'm here to learn as much as I can about the city pension problem. I retired from the county about 1.5 years ago, so I was a little familiar with the pension problem that they have. But I'd like to see what changes can be made. I personally think that there's a good chance that it is going to be a situation where the pension plan might have to be stopped and a plan put together that looks more like a 401k. I'm not as quick to say I believe people are overpaid here in most cases, but I do believe that they need to contribute more to their program, their retirement benefit, and I believe they should be able to take it with them whenever they leave, wherever they go. So that's pretty much it.
So ma'am, I have, you're here to learn what changes can be made. Consider 401k or a similar type plan, and consider having the employees contribute more. All right, and I'm backing up to Pat here. The problem with where CalPERS invests their money, salaries of city and county government, especially in rural areas, are too high. Employees should pay 50% of their PERS and consider going to a separate system. Okay? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you. Name is Daryl Brunn. I guess basically I'm here to learn as well. I come from private industry. I agree with the comments of the previous speakers, certainly where the investments are made, the difference between defined benefit pension plan with the public sector and the private sector is huge. And private industry just can't compete under these conditions long term. Also, I personally have a lot of people who are leaving the state of California. So, it's a bigger problem. It's just a bigger problem. It's statewide, nationwide. I'm here to learn, and I think it's important we try to get as many people to come and learn ourselves, because we need to be educated. We need to ask the right questions. We need to be involved so we can help fix it. certainly commend the mayor and the council for being here, and Phil and Elaine and Rick for the work you've done, because this is where it's going to start if we're going to fix this thing. I'm optimistic too, but we better get after it and come up with some of the solutions that were mentioned earlier about where the investments are made. New employees are going to be in a different plan that's more realistic long term. And that's what private industry's done. So let's get with the program here. That's basic. Thank you very much.
May I ask a question? Is there anybody here from the Appeal Democrat? Good. I would hope to see you here and report everything that you hear, because the public are not aware of what's happening. The public has got no idea what an unfunded liability is. I've had 3 different people from this county have me explain to them what their unfunded liability meant. And they said, Christ, trainer, stay away from it. I want my pension. And they still don't understand what I was talking about. I've tried to tell people it's an overdraft. Well, that doesn't mean anything anymore. The one thing that I didn't bring up is, one of the gripes that I have is that the city are holding back on sending in $500,000 to PERS, maybe this month or next month, for the interest on the unfunded liability. Is that correct? No? Good.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Robin Bertagna, the city's finance director. We actually have those direct payments lined up to go to CalPERS on July 29th. They're due by the end of the month to prepay our unfunded liability that we call our UAL, our unfunded actuarial liability, for the entire year, all at once, and take the interest rate discount that CalPERS allows us to take, rather than sending 1/12 each month. We're required to pay 1/12 each month. We don't do that. We haven't done that since fiscal year 15-16. We've been prepaying it since 15-16 in order to take advantage of that discount. So I think maybe the $500,000 that you're referring to, Mr. Trainer, has to do with my request as part of the budget process to make an additional discretionary payment like we did in September of last year. And frankly, we're holding off doing that. I'm going to be bringing it back to City Council because we wanted to give this process an opportunity to play out and see if anybody had suggestions or ideas, out of the box thinking that we as staff and the City Council haven't already thought of.
Now, from what I read on the different papers that you had on your budget, your payment to the unfunded liability this year was somewhere around $11 million. Is that correct?
Not towards the unfunded liability.
What was that for?
Yeah, I've got some sheets that I'd like to go through that were included in the handout, and I can definitely point you to exactly where you can see that.
If we are paying 7% on $150 million, which is approximately what the unfunded liability is, right?
No, our unfunded liability is $70 million.
I'm
so
sorry, 70.
7% is about $4.9 million.
Okay. All right, it's 70, and at 7%, now you're paying $5 million in interest.
That is correct.
And then you do pay that in, don't you?
We do.
You pay them the $5 million. Well, what's the other $500 for?
It would pay down the principal. I look at our unfunded liability with CalPERS kind of like a home mortgage. And when you're covering the interest, you need to pay more in order to reduce the principal, so you pay less interest the following years.
And I would like to, I would be a little bit different. I'd say that I look upon it like an overdraft that you're not covering. But if I had my druthers,
You work in the bank.
I wouldn't pay them a nickel. I would tell them, let your unfunded liability go up and down because you are the ones that created it. The city have paid in the interest that they were required to pay every year. Isn't that correct? Where PERS comes along and say, pay us 7%, or pay us whatever amount of money for the employees and for the city. You pay them that every year, correct?
Yes, and if we didn't, we would be in violation of CalPERS laws. They would assess interest and penalties against us.
But let some idiot like me think it out.
Okay.
You're paying them the money that they say you should pay them, and yet all of a sudden you got this overdraft. And they say, you got to cover the overdraft. Well, we don't have any money. Okay, we will just charge you interest on the overdraft. And if you don't pay us the interest on the overdraft, we will charge you a late fee on the overdraft. To me, if I sat in as mayor I'd be in here for a week because they'd throw me in jail, but I would tell them I wouldn't pay them a nickel on the unfunded liability because I don't believe they were the ones that created it. They were aware of it. When you go back over the stories that I can tell about the pension issues and all the things that I've run up against, we've been told so many stories. PERS came up here and explained how they assess their rates, and they held a meeting over at Whitaker Hall. The hall was filled. Everybody walked out of there. Nobody knew anything of what they were speaking about. We talked about labor unions, we talked about city, we talked about that, we talked about this, and nobody understood anything. So if you are going to bring PERS up here, tell them this is what you're going to answer. Don't come up here with all of your charts. Tell us why you got us into this predicament. You didn't make the money you're supposed to make. You're charging us for it. You know where you can go. Once again, if I was mayor, I would last about 2 days. Thank you. I'm going to be quiet now.
I would like to respond to one thing that you said, Mr. Trainer. Those agencies that have stopped paying PERS, because there are some in the state of California that have done so, their retirees have taken a big cut in their retirement pensions. It's the retirees that suffer when that happens. And I look at the retirees that were here at the city when I first came here 20 plus years ago, and I would genuinely feel bad if they took a 50, 60% pay cut in their retirement when they counted on a certain retirement income. So that would be the impact ultimately of taking that action.
Thank you.
Robin, you're entirely correct. All the cities and counties we have contracts with PERS, and they know where we live. You can't violate them. These were entered into in good faith. So while it would be nice to walk away from the unfunded, you can't do that. And the perspective on the meeting, Whitaker Hall, the guy that presented the information for Sutter County was a guy named Rick Santos, a very honest guy. He left CalPERS because he had disagreements with how they ran CalPERS. He went to, I forget which county, I think it was Merced or some other county, and took over their plan. And instead of short paying and not paying the correct amounts, he started paying in more. And instead of being 69% as of a year or two ago, they were like 90%, I believe. So management does make a great deal. And I want to give kudos to, I think you changed your hairstyle, Robin. I recognize you. Robin's done a wonderful job here, and she's very honest. And I'll have to say the staff has done a good job, but this is a monumental program. It's going to take more than effort. It's going to take a little luck, too. I thank you guys for having us.
I'd like to make a comment on this. Remember, some years ago, Stockton filed bankruptcy. And the judge said that the pensions could be stopped. But the unions all came in and so forth, and the city came back in and said they were going to pay the pensions. But that's still not decided by the courts. And I think if we go forward, because so many of the cities are broke, it will be decided by the courts that they can file bankruptcy, and then people will lose their pensions completely. That's why employees need to be informed of what is going on.
One thing I would like to address, we will have on October 10th, one of the senior actuaries from CalPERS coming up, along with the individual who heads up stakeholder outreach group. I've not met that individual. I have worked with the cities. He was formerly our senior actuary. He's now moved on to something different. I'm not sure what his title is right now with CalPERS, but I'm very appreciative of his gracious offer to come up to our meeting and speak with us and members of the public and try to help address these issues, because he is very well aware that this is a problem for every agency in California, not just City of Yuba City. But I can tell you, I've worked with him in the past, starting very detailed in January of 2019, going back and forth, trying to address the CalPERS liability. Also broaching the subject that Mr. Trainer brought up of why not just sell bonds and pay off as much as we can to CalPERS to avoid that 7% interest rate. And there's a GFOA, the Government Finance Officers of US and Canada that recommends you don't do that, because what happens is if CalPERS has a 30% drop in your investments, I'm just going to use round numbers. Let's say it's $100 million and we issued $100 million in debt to pay it down, and then there's a 30% market correction. We just vaporized $30 million. And we still have to make payments on the debt, and now we have another unfunded liability with CalPERS of $30 million that we have to make payments to. That's a problem. That's why GFOA recommends that you don't do that. I was at a conference where somebody stood up and said that they had done that. They used city reserves and paid off their unfunded liability. And all of us finance directors in the room kind of went, okay, good luck with that. Made us all very nervous. And that's why we haven't done it. We've tried to chip away a little bit at a time when we can with CalPERS, but it's a big issue and there's not an easy solution. So I appreciate everybody being here and your participation through this process.
If I can chime in on the backside of that, Robin, as many of you know, I deal in finance and accounting. It has a secondary effect if you go out and issue more bonds as well. Right now we have an excellent bond rating. And Robin and the staff here, Spencer, these guys have done an awesome job of being able to issue bonds for public works and things that we need here in the city and keep our interest rates very low. And if we overextend ourselves with bonds to get us, pay the unfunded liability to potentially get it, we could be overextended and our credit rating could go down, and it could have a secondary effect all the way through every service that we provide to all of the residents in the city. So there's more than one reason there that we shouldn't go and take out bonds in order to pay that off. Just sharing a little bit from myself with what I know about PERS and comments that I've had and discussions I've had with people that work for CalPERS and have worked for CalPERS over the years. CalPERS has known for quite a long time this is a problem. I knew a gentleman that a few years ago was commissioned by the governor's office to go up and down the state talking to municipalities because they were looking at different options. So believe me, when we start discussing how this is a problem, CalPERS knows it's a problem. The legislatures know that this is a problem. The governor, well, he's new, but the other governors knew that this was a problem. It's going to take us all. The investment choices and the investment options that they have, just so you know, there's more than just our state legislature that guides that. Because as an investment advisor, we're governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA that tell us what we can and cannot do as investment advisors. And one of the things that we have to abide by is the fiduciary responsibility to our clients. And when you have a governing body that has entrusted you with funds and they set their investment policies, whether you like it or not, or agree with it or not, that is what you're bound by. And because if not, the investment advisor can get themselves in trouble. So there's multiple layers here of things going on. So to talk to the legislatures, to talk to the governor's office about, why are they exempting out certain investment options and choices is a good start. But just realize that, there is a national governing body that tells the investment advisors that are managing the funds for CalPERS that they have to do. They cannot deviate. They have to do what the state tells them to do. And they are bound by that or they would be in trouble. So just a little bit of information.
Thank you. All right, so we're trying to shoot for no longer than an hour, maybe an hour and a half. If anybody does not have anything else to add, kind of get us kick-started here for our next meeting, which will include visits from the staff of Assemblyman Gallagher and Senator Nielsen. I'm going to ask Robin to go through the reading material that you all have access to, something to do over the next month or so to help inform yourself, and then we'll adjourn.
As staff, when we began trying to prepare for this meeting and tried to think about what would be helpful to you all, I know some of you have read our actuarial reports before and some probably not. I asked myself what would be of interest and be helpful to you to kind of give you the backstory, the back history, and all of that. And I'd like to walk through with you what you have in your packet tonight, why it's included, and how I think it might help you get up to speed with where we're at. The very first item, number 1, is the City Manager's Department Pension Sustainability Working Group White Paper. I read through this when it came out. Very interesting and informative. Talks about all the issues of pensions and why it's a problem throughout the state of California. It's not just a Yuba City problem. It's a group of city managers getting together and trying to put procedures, processes, and change in place to address this. So I wanted to share this with the citizens that are coming to attend these meetings.
Can I say something? And forgive me, I just want to point out something that I read when I read through this. When you guys get to it, something we've already talked about on page number 2. This is League of California Cities. There's I'm sorry.
Page 2.
Page 2. It's what?
She doesn't have tabs.
Oh, tab number 1. Yes, or you don't have a tab? I think that's that page you're on right there. If you look on there, it says the following summarize the recommendations included in this white paper. Go to number 3. Continue lobbying strategy primarily directed at CalPERS board pushing for changes to their current investment strategy. So that's already in the works as well. I just wanted to point that out to you. So you'll probably find more stuff that kind of strikes you, but we're not the only ones that are aware of that, so hopefully that gives us a bigger voice down the road.
And I'll add before I continue going through the list, number 4 under those recommendations is one that I've told folks repeatedly, city employees who are willing to listen, et cetera, that I think eventually all classic employees, which I will own the fact that, yes, I'm one of those as well, will eventually be faced with, from this date forward, everyone becomes PEPR employees with PEPR benefits, 2 at 62, no more 2.7 at 55. Even though I'm one of them, I acknowledge it's a very rich benefit. But it's a very costly benefit, and I think that that's going to be a major solution. Why hasn't it happened yet? Because the PERS board is ruled by unions. Unions are not in favor of a change that decreases benefits. So that said, I will continue on and tell you the rest of what's in your packet. I've included, with staff's help, we have for you all the actuarial reports as of June 30th, 2017. The miscellaneous valuation report came out in July of 2018, and all of the safety reports came out in August of 2018. We anticipate those updates coming out this month, hopefully for miscellaneous, and next month for safety, if it holds true like it was last year. When I emailed the city's actuary that did our actuarial reports last year, they no longer work for CalPERS, so I assume that we will be having a new actuary this year doing our reports. I don't know if that means that there's going to be a slight delay in when we receive them or what. That said, there's several actuarial reports 2A through 2G for you to review. The areas that I would say focus on, it shows you the unfunded accrued liability on the very front page. And then the other section that I find is very informative from my perspective are pages 4 and 5, where it breaks down what is considered the normal cost. And the difference between the normal cost and the unfunded liability is normal cost is what the CalPERS actuaries determine is the cost for doing business for our employees that are still here working and are active. Whereas the unfunded liability is money that we already owe for past service credits. And then it shows a projection on page 5 of what our unfunded liability payments will be in the future, along with what our rates will be in the future. And the miscellaneous plan that we included in your packets includes an update of sorts. We had an unfunded liability payment, and I'll get to this kind of towards the bottom of the packet. We had one unfunded liability payment due for the miscellaneous plan, but after we made the supplemental payment last September, the unfunded liability payment for the miscellaneous plan went down almost $147,000 because of that additional discretionary payment. So let me move on to the next item, item number 3. Because unfunded liabilities are such a big deal for us at the city, I put together a memo every year to the city manager, and he passes it along to city council, showing what the increase or decrease in unfunded liabilities are, along with a table that's attached that summarizes each plan, the assets of the plan, the liabilities of the plan, the increase or the decrease, and where we're at as a funded status ratio, which compares the assets of each plan to the liabilities of each plan, and how much we're covering of what CalPERS says we owe. I am also shared, and it's in your packet, the CalPERS unfunded liabilities and funding strategy that was presented to City Council last September 2018, and the request to pay an additional $750,000 to CalPERS towards the city's unfunded liability. Along with that staff report and backup information that shows changes in the unfunded liability changes. Attached to that staff report, there's a graph that shows anticipated projected PERS costs on a trajectory that goes up, up, and up over the next 5 years, along with a summary from the actuarial reports that shows the city's anticipated normal cost for current service, along with the UAL payment for past service, along with a total, and compares that year over year and included projections from fiscal year 16-17 through fiscal year 24-25. In addition, we've included the actual presentation that I gave that night, along with my talking points. I don't know that the slides are all that helpful without knowing the commentary that kind of goes with them. And I did not read through this again to see if I had typos. I put this together for myself. So please, no editorial comments about my bad spelling or grammar or what have you. These are my notes, but I'm sharing them with you so in hopes that it helps you have a better understanding of where we're at with CalPERS. The next item in your packet, which is item number 6, is our CalPERS prepayment option analysis, where we compare how much we think we're going to lose out of the city treasury by prepaying our CalPERS in July against the discount rate that CalPERS allows us to take on prepayment. And you can see when you look at this that we saved about $124,000, we project. Not knowing what the interest rate's going to be on the city's portfolio in July, we anticipate an average rate of return of about 2.25%. That said, our total payment to them was $4,979,719. So just under $5 million for our unfunded liability for fiscal year 1920. In addition to that, I've attached what we preliminarily put together for fiscal year 1920, and that shows that our unfunded liability payment would have been $5,126,624, except for the fact that we made the additional discretionary payment last September. It brought down our unfunded liability payment on the miscellaneous plan by just under $147,000. And I'm kind of getting into the weeds by sharing number 8 with you. These are the PERS cost projections using the July 2018 actuarial reports. And there's a page for each. There's the summary on top for fiscal year 18-19 through 24-25. That's a summary that tallies and totals all the attached pages to it. And then there's a page for each and every plan that we have with CalPERS. And it just pulls data directly out of our actuarial reports and compares what CalPERS thinks the payments are going to be, and we look at it at the end of the year, because their data is always, frankly, about a year behind ours. For example, we have classic employees that retire out, so the amount we pay CalPERS, because the classic rates for normal cost are higher, our payments during the year aren't quite as high as CalPERS thought they would be, because we have turnover and we're hiring, in most cases, PEPR employees. But that's, I think, good information for you all to have. And then lastly, well, not quite lastly, number 9 is a summary of our June 30th, 2017 actuarial reports. They included information as to what it would look like for our payments If they switch to, instead of a 30-year amortization schedule, they talked about at the CalPERS board level going to a 20-year amortization level or a 15-year. And I looked at the payments and compared what it would be for 30-year, 20-year, and 15-year. Suffice it to say that we can't afford the 15-year mortgage. It would be awesome if we could pay off our debts in 15 years, but it's just not feasible. But I did want to share that with you as well. And then lastly, I hear from folks, well, why don't you just get out of CalPERS? It's not that easy. I attached the projected hypothetical termination liability sheet as the last attachment, item number 10. And it depends on, they lock in your rate tied to the bond market at the time you pull out of PERS when and if you pull out. So they give you a range, 1.7 on the low end, 1.75 as an investment rate of return that they anticipate getting, or 3% at the high end based upon the U.S. Treasury yield. And it shows you that our termination liability, if based upon the June 30th, 2017 actuarial reports, would be between $244 million and $302 million. I think about how would we pay that. Our most expensive asset in the city is the 5th Street Bridge because we just are building a new one.
And sell it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to buy a bridge from us so we can pay our UAL liabilities. So through this process, if anybody comes up with an out-of-the-box idea, I welcome it because I've tried to rack my brain. Frankly, I have a very selfish vested interest in taking care of this problem as well because CalPERS hopefully will be my income until the day I drop over and cease to exist. So I have a very strong interest in taking care of this problem. I'm well aware of it. I've gone down to CalPERS board meetings and tried to speak about what I heard from a lot of you tonight, which is their investment choices and ratcheting those down and limiting our choices on items that could potentially make a lot of money. And we get our 3 minutes and aren't even allowed to finish a sentence. It's kind of embarrassing. So I feel like we've, as staff, tried, and I welcome this process. So thank you all for being here.
Robin.
Before you get off the line, I would like, you brought up something, Robin. This all began, you just said you were allowed 3 minutes to speak down there. The county of Sutter was able to push this through by invoking the law, as they claimed at the time, the 5 minutes. You're allowed 5 minutes to speak, and at 5 minutes, out, no more.
They could reduce it to 3 and even 2.
What they did to you to put it down to 3, so you were able to speak less. But as I say, when this first went through, when the pension issue went to, when the unfunded liability began in 2004, we have a lot of people, some people in the city objected at the county level. And the county were able to invoke the 5-minute law, because we had an administrator called Mr. Combs who pushed through all kinds of issues. He was presented with all the numbers as to why it wouldn't work, and he was able to bring in the 5-minute rule, and nobody was allowed to speak about anything. Thank you. I'm glad you brought it up and said it was 3 minutes, because you understand now why some of these things happen. And the other thing is that I would say I am not in favor of issuing any bonds to pay down the unfunded liability. I am in favor of not paying the unfunded liability, period. Thank you.
I do have a question, though. In reading your documents, can you tell us what exactly PEPRA and EPMIC or whatever means?
PEPRA is the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, if I'm correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, EPMC is what?
Employer Paid Member Contributions.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to go back to where I was a few minutes ago. I think I've got the world solved here real quick based upon our earlier discussion. When we figure out what the 300 million is in order to opt out, we elect Mr. Trainer as mayor, and it'll take him less than 3 minutes to go to jail. Then we can bring him cake.
With a file in it.
With a file in it. Does that work for you, Mr. Trainer?
Do I have to walk the beat down?
I say that in jest because we can see this is a much bigger issue. Something occurred to me earlier, and I passed a note over here to the mayor to concur with him. We hear a lot of good ideas, but this should be a good, safe, open forum. Shouldn't be, an aggressive attacking back and forth, but it should be a place we have some good, honest dialogue. And we've got Assemblyman Gallagher's office coming in, and we have Senator Nielsen's office coming in, whether it'll be them or one of the representatives, someone's coming. So we've got two of our legislative branches represented. I think we ought to extend an invitation to the governor's office and see if he will come or send a representative at the same time to really have some good dialogue, because then you've got all three bodies of California government that can hear your voice, not in 3 minutes, but again, being in a very productive, non-confrontive, but have a good deliberative process with what's going on, what your concerns are. And again, the League of California Cities recommends changes to the investment portfolio. They, have talked about, changing classic to PEPRA. It gives us a little bit more of a open forum to relay this message to our elected officials. So I would ask this body, is that an invitation that you would like the city to extend on your behalf?
And the union members. I think the union
Invited.
Yeah, and I can tell you that I heard from some of the union people here in the city, and they wanted to be here, but they had to work, and they said they were going to be watching this, and that's one reason it's all being recorded. It is important for the employees to help understand what the concerns are. It's important for the citizens to understand what the unfunded liability does to the services we provide the city. So, but it needs to be a good, safe environment. And we want to be open, but at the same time, we know, honestly, the solutions aren't taking wages back down to poverty level in California and stuff like that. And we've made promises to a lot of people, which there's several annuitants here that's on CalPERS already, that you realize promises need to be kept because you know what it would do to you. But I think that we could have a good dialogue with people. And I would like to, Mr. Mayor, I think we've got our marching orders to extend that invitation. And if we can make that happen, I think that would be really good.
I think so. Trying to find.
You've got the governor's cell phone number?
Yeah. He hasn't responded to my text yet, though. We'll see what happens.
One of the other speakers we've invited to come, Dane Hutchings, he was a policy advisor with the League of California Cities. He's no longer with the League, but he's kind of an expert, if you will, through the League of California Cities throughout the state of California as it relates to pension issues and problems. And he made a commitment to me to come up and speak when we held these meetings. And I appreciate his honor and integrity and willingness to come up and still do that, even though he's changed jobs and he no longer works for the league. So I look forward to him coming as well, because he's been very involved. He's the one that rallies the city managers, the finance directors when they need people to come down to Sacramento to speak in front of the PERS board when there's an issue. He's emailed me and called me in the past, and we've been willing to find out on Thursday that we need to go down on Monday or Tuesday. And because of our close proximity to Sacramento, Spencer and I hop in the car and we go down. So I guess maybe he's returning the favor, so to speak, and I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, too, just a reminder to those sitting without a microphone, I'm still roving the microphone, so if you want to speak, feel free to just raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone to you.
Just a simple question, and it's probably answered already, but have the unions been invited to make a presentation?
Presentation.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
I
believe.
think they should, if they're governing PERS board, controlling it, they should come and present to us their rationale for letting what happened happen.
Yeah, it's the big statewide unions, I think, that control the PERS board, not our local unions.
Well, they're all part of the whole, okay? So somebody from representing unions in general would benefit us to understand their position. And I'd be really interested in that.
I'm going to speak a little bit because Robin is correct. It's different areas. We used to be employees in charge of each other. I flew for the first time ever by myself down south because I wanted to vote against becoming unionized. Well, guess what? Southern California and San Francisco made us union. At first, we could go and talk to our assemblymen, our senators. But then that was forbidden because they hired people that go and talk to them directly. And if you really want to see what the union's doing, look at how much the union contributes for election of certain people. The employees don't have the control. And big-time union has the control. Our local people, I really believe that they know this needs to be fixed and they'd like to fix it, but they don't have the control.
Still like to hear from them.
If I may, I've had a lot of conversations with city employees over the years, and I always want to make it clear that this wasn't, being concerned about the pensions wasn't an attack on them. In fact, I used to tell every time I addressed the board, Sutter County Board, I said, you know, the problem is it's immoral to promise an employee a benefit you can't pay for. And I think you understand that. The city's done, your bedside manner has been really good, better than the counties, not to be negative, but I think that's important. Yuba City's tried really hard, but the problems were entered into, and PERS lied to everyone. They underestimated their liabilities. They pretty much lied to everyone. That's why one of their CEOs is spending 4 or 5 years in prison. I mean, you know, that's not on the city. But the city employees, I think a lot of them understood early that there was an issue. So I don't think we have that problem with the unions here.
One thing I'll add, PERS preliminary investment returns for last fiscal year are out. They were 6.7%. So didn't hit the 7% mark that they strive for, but at least we got pretty close this year.
I have looked at that, and the one thing I'd like to ask is that, do they include the 7 or the 7.5% they're getting on the interest on the unfunded liability in that interest, in that return on investment?
No, just investments.
I think it's just from their portfolio. And I think that that goes straight towards paying towards the city's unfunded liabilities.
Oh, okay, because that was one of the things that, to me, the best thing that PERS could do is put everything into the unfunded liability, charge 7.5% interest, and they would be able to fund the whole pension issue. Really, this is true? And I've run the numbers on it, and it does work.
I'll throw this out there for you.
Print more money.
While we speculate, I wonder what the debt service is on that beautiful building down in Sacramento. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, before we wrap it up here, Mr. Swearingen, you said you wanted to hear from unions. Was it a member of the local union you wanted to hear from?
No, I'm not wise enough to say which one, but we need to hear, because the unions do come in and encourage strikes if you don't pay X salary, and it jacks things up constantly. So I guess my concern is, how do we begin to get word from and to them in terms of the actions that you have so gracefully offered tonight.
Okay, so when we make a request of a speaker, was it a so-called big statewide union or a local someone? You don't know? Okay.
You would have to know more about that than I do.
Okay.
May I make a suggestion on that? I think he's very good at requesting the union workers down there, but I really think we should request local unions and get their position here, and then get the one that represents down in Sacramento.
Okay.
Because that's two different viewpoints, I'm positive.
All right. And that, just keep in mind, that's exactly what it's going to be, as a request. Whether we have any takers, another story.
Yeah.
But I have no problem
But we can publish that.
ensuring that we request that. Sir.
Yes, sir. Oh, excuse me, thank you. Once you get going on this, it's going to create a lot of publicity statewide.
Yes.
And I was going to suggest it might not hurt to get a syndicated columnist putting a column in the Bee about it, like Dan Walters. Yeah. He has been very adamant about the
Yes.
underfunding of the pensions and the liabilities in the state, and he's very adamant about it.
We are writing it down as you speak.
If I may, Rachel Rosenbaum's article was in Pension Tsunami. Yeah, which is major. Yeah, did you write the article about this meeting, or?
Not Rachel.
Rachel.
I'm sorry, Mickey. Okay. Okay. Who wrote the article? It was in the paper 2 or 3 days ago.
Jake.
Jake. Okay. Well, tell Jake his article is in Pension Tsunami, so Yuba City's on the map, top of the page. So, kudos.
What is Pension Tsunami?
It's it is a website, and it's been dealing with this issue, state issues, all the way back. It's been chronic.
Yeah.
All right.
There were a lot of people that had these problems. There were people from the League of Cities that said, do not go to 3 at 50, but not everyone listened, so.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, one more thing.
Just one last thing. First of all, Nikki, thank you for being here. We spoke earlier, and she is going to be covering this whole process, and I think she's going to do an excellent job. So this is going to be really good. Back to what you were talking about with the unions and such. I just want you guys to know we have some of the most incredible employees here at the city. And just talking with them, they understand, and I back up what was said from the podium. There's two different viewpoints, and I do not want any of our union employees to feel intimidated coming in to try to talk about this, because they know as well as we do that this is a burden on the city, that the unfunded liability is a burden on the services, that because it drains from the cash flow. But they are wonderful people, and this is just a problem we all have to work through. So if they do take that invitation, I encourage them to share their viewpoints, because they're an employee and they're a hard worker and they're a valuable employee and an asset to this city, and it needs to be a safe environment. And I have not heard one single employee since I was decided to run for office, or I've been in office, that has demanded anything in relation to PERS or anything. So we have wonderful employees, but I agree with Elaine. There's two different messages from our employees and our assets here, and what you will hear at the much higher level and the big level. So I just wanted to say that for our team and our employees, because they are top notch.
My position is not the employees, it's the union leadership, even at the local level. I don't think we should intimidate the employees at all. We have to face a problem that they already know about. And unions at some level have been very implicit in what happened and what is happening. And we can't leave them out of the equation. It has to be, and here locally is where you start. So if we can have union representation, as Elaine says, or that you might figure out, I just think we need to have it.
All right. All right. Thank you, folks. I hope this was at least beneficial. Good kickstart to, we have 5 more meetings ahead of us. We all have some homework to do. Enjoy that. And back to the good old days. Our next meeting will be here, 6 o'clock on August 15th, Thursday, August 15th. With that being said, thank you very much, and we'll see you then.